Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. In this week's edition of the Business Review, we explore expansion prospects at Wigton Wind Farm. The entity has surveyed about 22 sites across the island, but as you'll hear in this report from TVJ's Andrew Laidley, Wigton has been blocked from setting up operations on some of the more promising locations.
The search is on. That's the word from General Manager of Wigton Windfarm, Earl Barrett, who says the company is seeking out a new location to establish its newest wind farm. He says the company has identified some promising locations, but notes that there are a few obstacles.
We carried out a test across the island on about 22 sites. And of those 22, certainly Manchester, where we are, still comes out ahead in terms of land that we can use. So there are 5 others that we have earmarked where wind turbines could be installed. But in terms of putting up a wind farm, having the land, having the wind regime is only a part of the equation. You also have to have the demographics to take the power. You have to have the transmission line to move the power to where it needs to be used.
But even beyond those challenges, Mr. Barrett explains that the entity is being barred by the National Environment and Planning Agency, NEPA, and the National Land Agency.
I can tell you that out in St. Thomas, between St. Thomas and Portland, the wind regime in that area, going up into the Jonkro Mountain, we would get about 40% more power than we're getting at Wigton now. But between the Land Authority and NEPA, so we can't cut a blade of grass there. That's the thinking now. We think in years to come we may be able to convince them that if we get in there, we may even help the community more than the damage we do, because a wind turbine has a very small footprint.
In terms of plans to set up a wind farm in Rockfort, Kingston,
there are days when it's 24 hours, but there are days when there are no wind. But there are few of those days. Whereas religiously, when we carried out the tests up in the hills of Rockfort, above Carib Cement, you would start out in the morning as the sun rises, and if you know how wind is created, it warms up the air over the ocean, and that warm air is coming to the cooler land. So you have air coming off. Yes? It's only good for about average of 6 hours. So you wouldn't want to spend money for that unless you were using it as you're rich enough to say, I can live with that 6 hours.
In January, Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark announced plans to launch an initial public offering for Wigton Wind Farm in the first quarter of this year. The long-awaited move will see Jamaicans owning a direct stake in government assets. Mr. Barrett says the monies earned from the operations will flow into government coffers and help to stimulate growth in strategic areas.
Of course, the power don't go to JPS for free, eh? So you're talk about profit. So the power will go to JPS, which is the national grid here, whatever the name is in other country, and from that revenue is earned.
Wigton represents the largest wind farm in the Caribbean and is expected to end the current fiscal year with about $1.3 billion in revenues. Andrew Laidley, TVJ News.